Hello and welcome to the Tennessee Informer. Thank you all for joining us tonight. What does a military veteran and retired law enforcement officer with strong conservative principles do after retirement? Well, if you're Will Bolton, you serve. He currently teaches in a local school, but plans to serve his district in another way in 2026. He wants to be a citizen legislator and replace incumbent Mark Cochran, a Lee-supported legislator. A little bit about our guest, Will Bolton, in his own words. He's from a small town, originally in Hernando, Mississippi, which is approximately 25 minutes south of Memphis. He encountered a lot of challenges early in life and was able to persevere. He has a strong work ethic, faith in God, and was able to achieve many of his career goals. He's married to his high school sweetheart, Leah, for the last 33 years, and together they have raised and homeschooled all 6 of their children and have been blessed with 5 wonderful grandchildren. He served in the U.S. Navy as well as the Tennessee Air National Guard, as well as a deputy sheriff patrolman in law enforcement, culminating in a 20-year career as a federal agent with the U.S. Secret Service, ICE, CPB/Office of Internal Affairs, until retiring from DHS in 2021 and then moving to McMinn County. He currently serves as a substitute teacher with McMinn County Schools. He's a tutor at the Classical Conversations Homeschool Co-op. His kids attend that school as well, and he's a part-time and American government teacher at a local private school. He's a committed Christian who is devoted to his family and guided by a heart for service. His principles are deeply shaped by his grandmother, known as Mamaw. Hey, I had a Mamaw too, who raised him and taught him the importance of faith, hard work, service, and integrity. He's running as a candidate for Tennessee House of Representatives and is focused on confronting the real issues facing the community and promoting practical conservative solutions that will move all of District 23 forward. Will, thanks for being with us tonight. How are you doing?
Doing well. Thank you for asking.
Well, we're glad to have you. Let's start with the issues that you plan to campaign on. And we've talked about this, so you got some local issues and that you want to represent the district overall. And so let's talk a little bit about that.
So about 8 months ago, somebody asked me if I'd consider running, and I told them let me think about it, kind of let me pray about it. And I did for about 2 months and spoke to people during that time here in the area. And folks were just like, this guy doesn't represent me. He doesn't care about me. All he wants to do is move up in the party. He doesn't look out for my interests. I don't feel like I can, talk to the guy. He doesn't do anything for me.
The guy would be Representative Cochran, right? Mark Cochran?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry. Representative Mark Cochran, exactly.
Okay.
And so that kind of helped me make a decision. And actually, it's interesting because there was a vote a couple years ago on the Titans Stadium. And so there were, hundreds of millions of dollars for the Titans Stadium. So I kind of looked into that a little bit. And then I looked at the FedEx Forum in Memphis. And I just asked him plainly in a local Republican group, like, what does that have to do with East Tennessee? What benefit is there to McMinn County of all that money going there? We've got schools here that are falling apart. We got different things. And not surprisingly, I never got an answer. And he actually started where he kind of avoids me and walks off and, whatever. So that kind of helped me. I was like, all right, everything I've been hearing about the guy is true. He doesn't think he has to answer to people. And so, that's not what you do. The representative, by its very definition, right? You represent the people in your area, your constituents. And so I just made the decision that, it was time to kind of take him on and just, do my best to knock him out.
So the Tennessee Constitution does say that the citizens should instruct their legislators. That's part of the plan. And it only works the right way if citizens are involved. So, basically you're saying that you're actually going to do your job. You're going to listen to your constituents and hear what their concerns are. And you also say that once you make a vote, that you'll be willing to explain that vote.
Not only that, I plan to have a website, and I will explain the vote on the there'll never be a surprise on why I voted a certain way. And excuse me. And also, the voucher bill, there was a narrative kind of put forth. And it was interesting because I heard it from a lot of the Republicans in office now that 70 to 80% of their constituents wanted the bill. And I've not talked to a single person in favor of that bill.
I heard that same lie in Stewart County, or in my district. I heard that same lie from one of my legislators.
Yeah, Mark pushed that agenda, as well as our local state senator did, push that narrative. And so I think when most of your constituents, let me back up a minute. So substitute teaching, I teach at some of the high schools, and one day the maintenance man came into the room I was in, and we started talking a little bit, and he brought up that there had been a town hall about that voucher bill, and that everybody there had expressed their displeasure regarding the bill to Representative Cochran, and that he basically didn't acknowledge it or anything, and he voted for it anyway. He was told by people all over the county here and in the district not to vote for that bill, and he did. And I just don't think that's how you represent your constituents. If you've got an overwhelming amount of people, that's who you work for. You don't work for Bill Lee. You don't work for the speaker. You work for those people. And right. So I think he's forgotten that.
Yeah. Now, the District 23 is McMinn County, and what else?
It's McMinn, and it's southeast Monroe, like Tellico Plains and Coker Creek, those kind of places. Okay. It's just like a little sliver cut off the side there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh. And yeah, like I say, I heard that myth that all the polls show, but I don't know of anybody. I know I wasn't polled. I don't know of anybody who was polled. So I don't know exactly who conducted this poll. I heard that it was Beacon Center. I won't swear to that. But I don't know who they asked. They didn't ask me, that's for sure. And my kids are out of school, but I still see it as a waste of money. I think it's patently unconstitutional according to our state constitution. We talked about that earlier with my first guest. The state constitution calls for public, funding of public education, not private education.
Yep.
And it's like, okay, we have one failed system. Oh, trust us. We're going to spend more money. And we're going to make it better, but we're not going to fix what's already broke. We're just going to create a diversion here. And that takes care of the problem. I'm like, okay, that just doesn't pass the smell test, not to mention it's unconstitutional. So,
well, one thing is interesting is when you have public school teachers here and you have homeschool moms here, two polar opposite ends of the spectrum, and they agree on something, which right. They all did. Vouchers were terrible. Yeah. That's probably something you should listen to.
Yeah, pretty good clue there. So town halls, those are going to be one of your regular features?
Absolutely, yeah. I believe you can't represent people if you don't hear them.
Right.
And one thing I've noticed, I just saw this yesterday we had a Charlie Kirk memorial here, but he tends to gravitate and take pictures and smile and whatever. But he doesn't sit down with the people here. And so that's what I find more and more and more. There's a dissatisfaction with him. I rarely hear people. I've not heard anybody say, yeah, he's doing a great job. I think it's a matter of there's taking pictures and there's taking action. And I think he's in the mold of taking pictures is what he wants to do. But, back to those vouchers real quick, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So I worked in internal affairs a long time, and I spent my last few years at the Inspector General's office in a special investigations unit. But throughout those years, probably the last half of my federal career was in that kind of a capacity. And so you look at waste, fraud, abuse, misconduct, and everything I see about that bill is like red flags. There's no accountability. The first 10,000 of them, I think you just basically had to put an application in. And that's $75 million just spit out. And then you look at you would think there'd be more of a means test if it was truly what they said. It's going to help little Johnny who's in a bad area go to a school to get a leg up. You think there'd be a means test, but a family of four, their idea of a poor family of four is 174,900. 174,900. I
That's
mean,
pretty good money, and especially in Tennessee, that's well above the average for sure.
yeah, and I think that just kind of shows that this program was not what they painted it out to be, not what they wanted. And it's interesting. Your last guest was very interesting. I mean, I was reading and I was like, man, she is right on with this. So that's an outstanding enlightenment there. So.
Yeah, she does. She does good work, and more people need to listen to her. And like I said, I'm going to have her back on. I'll have her back on in November and January, and I probably need to have her for at least 90 minutes, just to get in a little bit deeper. But yeah, it's a problem. The whole voucher deal. Now, of course, they're not being transparent about it as far as the people getting the vouchers, and I think most of them, my understanding, I suspect that most of them are people that were already had their kids in in a charter school or a private school. So
That's absolutely correct.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to something you mentioned: town halls. That you're willing to do town halls. So now, granted, voting, doing the will of your voters. I mean, the voters are not all going to be on the same sheet necessarily on certain things. Okay,
Right.
so I would hope that your first thing was. And of course, this all has to do with how you campaign. That they're going to know what you think in terms of they know where you stand, where your principles are, and that you're going to, I would hope, defend the Constitution. But when it comes to things that it's not necessarily a constitutional issue, how do you decide? Is it going to, if you hear from more voters on a certain topic? I'm assuming that will be how you make your decision.
Well, years ago, I found a great definition of conservatism that I like by Lynn Nofziger, who was a Reagan advisor, and it was basically goes the Constitution is written, right. That's speech, press, religion, right to bear arms, et cetera, and then also a small government, right? A government that's small. It's small. It's got limited functions, and then
Right.
individual responsibility, personal responsibility, and so. Somewhere in that threshold, I think a lot of decisions can be made. If not, that is something that I'll just have to kind of poll the district and just see what the overwhelming consent is. Because at the end of the day, you do represent the people. That's kind of like I was saying with these vouchers. I mean, nobody wanted them and they got ignored anyway. So
Yeah, kind of like we didn't want Obamacare and we got that. Yeah. And we wanted to repeal it, but we couldn't do that. So now, the town halls. Now, this guy, Mark Cochran, you're telling me that he's not accessible. Doesn't the guy work there in the county government? Doesn't he have a position in county government?
he does. He is the assistant to the county mayor, who happens to be his first cousin. He does have a position there. It's an interesting scenario. So, but yeah, he does. To be honest with you, I've never seen a position description. I don't know what he does. I took my class there last year to do a courthouse tour, and he was our tour guide. But beyond that, I don't know, other than ribbon cuttings maybe and things like that. So,
is that legal to be a county employee and a state representative? I'm just curious. Do you know?
I have no idea. I think it's probably ethically dubious. A lot of times what you'll see is campaigning during the day. You'll see him ribbon cutting and that type of thing, and then you'll see him posting on his campaign page. So there's a blurred line somewhere that I've seen, and like I said, I don't know the legality of it. I would think somebody might question it. I don't know, at least ask questions. But yeah, it's definitely a strange situation.
But you also say he's not accessible. He wants to. I mean, he works there in the county, and so he's going there at a certain time and he's leaving at a certain time, and he's out and about, but he's not accessible for questions.
That's what I'm told by people, that they can't get him. They can't talk to him. I've had a local guy. I won't mention his name, but he told me he can't get the guy to give him the time of day, and he's a longtime resident of the county and that kind of thing. And it's very strange. Yeah, I just think he's forgotten what his job is. He's forgotten the description. He's forgotten what the title is, representative.
Right.
A local teacher tell me that she felt like he was just trying to move up in the party. He's not worried about the people around here anymore. And it's certainly that way.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. So one of the things that you pledge is transparency. You talk about setting up a website and post the votes you make and explain why you make them. That's what they can expect if they elect you then.
Exactly. Yep. Now I would say this. Obviously, not all the legislature's in session because from what I hear, it's very busy. But within a reasonable amount of time after it goes into recess, I'll post things. If I can do it during the session, I absolutely will. But if not, as soon as I get back, I'll do it within a week or so.
Right. Yeah. Well, and so normally when session's in, it's Monday nights. You guys vote on things Monday night. That's just after everything is set up and everything's organized. So on Monday nights, you'll vote. And that doesn't start, I think you guys normally show up around maybe 4 or 5 and then could go ever how long. And then so Tuesday, Wednesday, that's committees. Thursdays are normally short days, and I think most of them leave fairly early on Thursday. And then, of course, they rarely, if ever, work on a Friday, and then you got the weekend. So there is time to, get back to the district and send out some notes or post it on Facebook or whatever. So somebody could do that if they wanted to. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you have an obligation to do that. There shouldn't be any question why you voted for something from your constituents. Like I said, I asked them about something simple, funneling money to the Titan Stadium and the FedEx Forum. And I've not gotten an answer to date. So I definitely have experienced that myself. And I know people around here. Now, if you've got, if you're a person of means, I think you get a little bit more attention, if that makes any sense. But I think that his ideology has kind of gotten a little screwy being up there. I know it's called the Swamp. Somebody actually told me that Tim Burkett has actually titled it the Sewer. So
yeah, that's pretty clse. Yeah.
One of the two of those. I can't remember who told me that, but somebody said that, and I thought, what, that's true. And like an old pastor of mine said, right, you can't get the water clean till you get the pigs out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we got plenty of pigs up there. Well, we got reptiles. Actually, we have reptiles. That's what a lot of them are. So a lot of them don't walk. They actually just slither. And you'll see that when you get up there, and you probably figure out pretty quick who they are. So what are some of your topics? Obviously, you're against the vouchers. So you would support repealing them. I mean, maybe even run a bill to repeal them. But what are some of the other topics, the other issues that you're interested in legislating on?
Well, I think the Hughes versus Lee situation going on now is something that they need to look into strongly. I mean, it's strange that they label us a constitutional carry state, and they kind of push that idea, and they talk about they're the most conservative legislature ever. But then, your fundamental Second Amendment right there, they're not willing to support it. Most of them. And I'm talking the legislature and all that. I'm not delving into the Senate or anything like that. But I think that there needs to be something addressing it. I mean, it actually boggles the mind, honestly, that this intent to go armed statute it's just. I mean, I've never even heard anything like that. And then when you kind of couch the state as we're constitutional carry, it's funny. In my class today, I actually said, we were kind of getting into the Constitution, and I said, "Who says we're a constitutional carry state?" And half of them raised their hands, and I said, "Nope." And so then I explained things to them, and they were like, "Oh, wow."
Yeah.
So the problem a lot of times, David, is it's just. People, it's ignorance, basically. I mean, you got people who they trust their incumbent and they don't verify. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they're told something, they believe it's true, and that's what Bill Lee did. He told them that you had constitutional carry. I run into people who think we have constitutional carry, and I have to explain to them, no, you really don't have constitutional carry. So Bill Lee lied about it. Most of the legislators had enough sense to know he was lying about it. Not all of them, but most of them had enough sense to know that. And it should have been taken care of a long time ago. And really, they had, there's so much hypocrisy here on the part of our legislature. Number one, they never addressed it. They never fixed it. And the TFA, for one organization, has been trying to get rid of this intent to go armed law for years. And I mean, it's just, it totally is not, it doesn't make any sense that we have the right to keep and bear arms, yet we have a law against the intent to go armed. So that's crazy on its face. And what's really insulting is the governor, the same governor who claims he gave us constitutional carry, actually files a suit against, the intent to go armed clause being challenged. He should have just, there's no reason to fight that. There was no reason for him to fight it. There was no reason for the AG to fight it. They should have just left it and should have said, yeah, you're right, according to, and here's the thing. Now, I want to make sure I'm clear on this. I think that, that we have allowed the court to have too much power in this country, power that they were not intended to have, okay? But what I've heard my whole life is, well, the federal government's supreme and the Supreme Court's the final arbiter. Matter of fact, that's what A.G. Scrimeti said in an opinion last year in reference to our nullification bill, okay? Yet, so that's when it comes to nullification on anything else, that's the answer he gives. But apparently he's okay with nullifying the Second Amendment, all right, because we have the Supreme Court with the Bruin opinion. Now, to clarify, this Hughes v. Lee is all based on state law, okay, even though there's a lot of references to the Bruin opinion and Hiller and McDonald. It's all based on state law, and it's, the Tennessee Declaration of Rights are the first thing. It's Article 1 of the Tennessee Constitution, and it says that right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, but the legislature shall have the right to restrict the wearing of arms with a view to prevent crime. However, that was the 1870 Constitution. In 1871, the state Supreme Court in Andrews v. State said, okay, you can't, and this is paraphrasing, you can't use you have to show some relation to actually lessening crime. You can't use this as a blanket excuse to deny people the right to keep and bear arms. And yet our AG is ignoring it and our governor's ignoring it. And you know what makes it worse? They're doing it with our tax dollars against us.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I got into a discussion with an elected official about that, and I finally got him to admit that they are using tax dollars to do it. It's funny. I've seen an email from the lieutenant governor where he says common sense constitutional carry, and I don't even know what that means. I have no idea. I think it's just something that was made up. But he supports common sense constitutional carry.
That's our lieutenant governor. That's our perverted lieutenant governor, correct? The one that. Yeah. Okay. And I don't know that he has actually any opinions, because from everything I can tell, he's not there. He's out to lunch. He's Tennessee's version of Joe Biden. So I don't know that he actually has any thoughts on that.
Well, I think that, I think one reason they're trying to fight this off is because, as you well know, the Second Amendment is the protector of all your other rights.
Right.
That's one kind of surprised in not seeing Representative Cochran get involved a little bit, like writing the letters that some reps did. Athens is home to the Battle of Athens in 1946.
Yeah.
I mean, if anybody doesn't know the history of that, real very quickly, there was the GI Nonpartisan League. It was all these World War II veterans. They came home and they were running for office. And there was a corrupt political machine, and that machine came in and they actually shot a gentleman in the back who was going to vote, took the voting boxes and went and locked them up in the jail, and all kind of barricaded themselves in there. And then the GIs acquired some weapons from different sources, but I know one was actually the armory here, and they laid siege to the place. I mean, they dynamite, and there's still holes downtown. I mean, and then they very politely cleaned the weapons and racked them back up. And then when the FBI came to investigate, the guy with the armory was kind of like, I don't know what you're talking about. So, but it broke the back of that machine. And that's one thing, the kids last year, I took them on a walking tour. A friend of mine's a local historian, and he knows everything about that battle. I had him do a walking tour with him, and I explained it. Your Second Amendment is the cornerstone of all your other rights.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to have a show on that. We have Dave Rexler on in November to talk about the Battle of Athens. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, that'll be good. And I say that as a retired federal agent. I strongly support the Second Amendment. It's funny. I got more conservative working in internal affairs, if that makes sense, just because I saw. There's an old saying that I quote all the time. It's that I heard. It's the very best men are men at best. And ever since we lost our spot in the garden, I think you can't really trust any man. And so it's interesting that people put their faith in politicians like that. So it's just, it's an interesting world we live in. But I think there's all day long. But that's just seeing back to what I was saying. Seeing cases of people misusing their power, misusing their positions, misusing funds. It actually, I would say I was probably more of a moderate until I went into internal affairs, and then now I'm off to the right somewhere. I don't know. I think I might dip my toe in libertarianism. I'm not sure. I believe in liberty, but yeah. So
well, ultimately, we and our children and grandchildren only have the freedom we're willing to fight for. Bottom line. Now, hopefully we can do that fight politically, but if not, hey, if we need another Athens, then we need another Athens. So what are some of the other things, other issues that where do you stand on other key issues in Tennessee, there's certain things you got to be known for. So let's hear your spiel on that.
Sure. So there was last session, there was House Bill 990, which was passed, which basically kind of added some abortion exceptions in and weakened pro-life laws a little bit, which I'm kind of unclear I was unclear at the time why Representative Cochran voted for it. And then one thing through in my past career, is I worked in a drug money laundering group, so I know how to follow the money. And so I realized he takes quite a lot of money from various PACs, medical PACs and whatever. And so that answered that question. But I think for somebody to say I'm a conservative, I'm a Christian, I'm this, and then you vote that way, or you're affiliated with different organizations that are pro-life and you vote that way. I know the Tennessee Right to Life endorsed him in 2024, so it's interesting. But that's one thing. I have 6 kids. I've got 5 grandkids and 1 on the way. I'm strongly pro-life. My last my 2 youngest kids we actually fostered and adopted. We fostered them for about a year and a half and adopted them. And so I'm 100% pro-life, and I just don't back off of that at all. So that's just not negotiable for me. But so you have that, and then you also, growing the size and scope of government the way they did with the voucher bill. It's just
our budget overall has been blown up. I know that I've heard other people talk about this. And I know that towards the end of the Haslam administration, it was like $38 billion. Now it's 59, 60, something along those lines.
Yeah, and that's something it's kind of a head scratcher, because it's blown up, but it's kind of like, where is it going? I know there's a surplus allegedly somewhere, and so what do we do with the surplus? You could have taken that 140 something million for these vouchers and divided it up among the 95 school districts, and you could have given them a little something, or you could have, there were thousands of things you could have done. But this surplus we got, why is that not being poured back into the counties? Why do you have some counties that, their schools were built in the 60s or 70s and their pipes are rusted and busted and all that? It just doesn't make a lot of sense. I think there's a lot of mismanagement there. And who knows, one thing that I have, this is just my thinking on it, is I think that there's been a slow creep of progressivism into our party. And I think the supermajority there has kind of not helped.
Yeah.
You know,
Because
I think
they don't need conservative votes. And I can tell you, they've had it since, I think, 2012, and they have pretty much ignored conservatives ever since then. And I don't know if it's been that slow of a march, because really from Haslam on, certainly by Haslam's second term, it's been full. It's hard to get anything conservative passed, and we're doing good to stop anything that's really bad. It's pathetic. It's an absolutely pathetic supermajority.
Yeah, it's just sad. But I honestly think with a grassroots effort, we could swap out a few of these seats. I read something the other day that said they thought a lot of seats would get turned over. I mean, money's always a factor. It's like I tell people, when somebody's like, what can I do? I'll say, what, I can use donations, I can use door knockers, and I can use prayer. I was told a couple of weeks ago, that's an incumbent, that they're going to throw everything they can at you because they want to keep him. Because he's a yes man. His reputation on the Hill is that, he says yes to whatever the governor wants, whatever the speaker wants. He doesn't, he never does it. And I think you ran a show, I forget how long ago it was, with Todd Warner, where he was talking about backroom deals with the vouchers, and that, I think Cochran was involved in that. I've seen a little bit of that. It was Todd Warner, right? I think that's the representative.
I've had him on a couple of times. Yeah, I've had Todd Warner on. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the thing. I mean, he's the assistant leader in the House, and he whips those kind of things.
Okay, let me get this straight. He's the assistant leader of the House. He's the assistant to the county mayor. Okay, I don't know. I'm seeing a trend there.
That reminds me of The Office. Remember the old show, The Office, assistant to the regional manager?
Yeah. Hey, I want to talk a little bit about immigration, illegal immigration. Tennessee didn't really care to do too much to crack down on it until after Trump got in office, and now we're all hoo about it. But you've got some experience with illegal immigration, and talk about that a little bit, and some ideas you might have in terms of legislation, state level. I mean, it's not just a federal problem; it's a state problem, and our state's made it worse. Bottom line, they have made it worse. We wouldn't have to clean out as many illegals in Tennessee right now if our state had not decided to make itself a magnet for illegal immigration. So what are your ideas for some legislation at state level?
I think one important thing to do is shut them out of benefits. And I know that sounds callous, but there is a rule of law in that area. For example, and this was a debate that I had with an elected official around here. So if I took my kids and they were in public school and I said, I'm going to have them go to Meigs County, the next county over, I have to pay an out-of-county tuition. Right. So there are kids in the schools here who don't speak English.
Yep, a bunch of them, no doubt.
Yeah, and there are, they're not here legally. It is what it is. I mean, so what I said to this gentleman was, why don't you all pass a law, have a citizenship, kind of a means test of citizenship, and if you don't meet it, you got to pay. You got to pay since your kids here. Because one thing they've done here is they've hired ESL people at the county level for 50, 60, 70 grand a year. Yep. On fair dime. Yep. I think that between that, getting them all, if they're 10 care, clean that up, clean all those things up. And I think that's what's made America in general more attractive, is they know that they can come in here, they can get on benefits. Mm-hmm. It's not like the days of, people coming over on boats from Italy and Germany and coming up from Mexico to work and to better the country. A lot of times it's just a benefits thing. And so I think you start off doing that. You start off kind of shutting that avenue. And then I think you just have to pass something to require local law enforcement to, assist the feds. I mean, you got some places that they don't report it. California's having that problem right now where they just won't report it unless there's an issue. And it's interesting because I've noticed a lot of cases around Tennessee lately, murders and whatnot. And they don't want to see them deported. It's very strange to me. And that's, it's typically the blue cities, but I think that's what you have to do. I mean, and I understand the human cost of it, but, and my wife and I were having this discussion the other day. They just say they've been here 20 years, but why did you not fix your status in 20 years? Right. And that's the thing. It's not hard to do. I mean, It's really not. And one thing to look at too, Obama, it's kind of a both party thing. For example, Obama was heavy on immigration enforcement. Bill Clinton was heavy on immigration enforcement. It's not a Republican thing. It's when people know it's the right thing.
Well, I don't know that. I mean, Obama had the whole DACA thing going. Matter of fact, that's one of the things that our state did a couple of years ago. And these were mostly the DACA kids, or kids is not an accurate description, but the DACA people, the ones that came over here, they're classified as children during the Obama administration, and he basically opened the floodgates. Our state tried to pass they did pass a law that allowed them to get professional licenses. So illegal aliens were allowed to get professional licenses. And this was after Biden was in office. This happened in 2022. I don't know how Cochran voted on that. That's something you might want to look at. Now, that did get repealed in 2024, I believe. Yeah, 2024 got repealed. But in 2022, our Republican supermajority passed a bill that would give professional licenses to illegal aliens.
One thing I think we need to have a resurgence of the old Tea Party, honestly. We need to just kind of purge as many of these guys as we can, and just try to start over. I mean, I remember, to your point on Obama, I remember doing a lot of raids back then. So I know there was enforcement actions, even though there was classification of the DACA piece.
Right.
So I remember going to chicken plants and all, and all that, and doing raids and whatnot. But yeah, I agree with you. There needs to be a penalty, and I think, like you said, professional licenses is that's a whole other level there. I mean, not long ago, I think they had a bad truck wreck somewhere, and they come to find out the guy was an illegal alien, and I think several people died in it. And I think that's just the kind of thing. If somebody can't speak English, I don't know how they get the license, but
right.
Yeah. There's an old saying that an old Roman philosopher that I like to quote. It's, if you give the people bread and circuses, they won't revolt.
Right.
And that's what the Republicans we have are doing. I mean, like Mark Cochran, I've looked at his record, and he hits the things that, oh, look at me. I voted for whatever, that at the end of the day, it kind of masks the bad votes, if that makes any sense.
Right. Well, because, how you really evaluate a legislator is not just the floor votes, but what they do in committee. Okay. Because the committee is where bills live or die. And so you can really tell if somebody's working an issue based on what they do in committee. That tells you a whole lot more, because a lot of the bills Tennessee laws, unfortunately, don't have much teeth. A lot of them do not have teeth, and that's a problem across the board. So you were in the Guard,
mm-hmm.
and I know you're a supporter of Defend the Guard. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I'm absolutely a supporter of it. Like I said, I'm a Constitution is written guy, right? And one branch of government is authorized to declare war. That's it. And I don't think I don't see how you send Guard troops to a foreign combat zone where they can get killed and maimed, and we've got all this going on with disabled veterans and all these other things, when there's not been a declaration of war. I mean, it makes no sense to me. That's a simple one to me. The Libertarian Party Mises Caucus folks, I've kind of looked into their views on it, and I wholeheartedly agree with them. I mean, it's common sense, right? It's kind of like saying, I'm a Christian and I read the Bible, but that part there I don't like.
Right.
It's the same kind of thing, and I don't see how you can. I don't see how you can say I'm a conservative, or I follow the Constitution, but that one part right there I'm not going to worry about.
Yeah.
It's common sense. I mean, I don't know how you could get around it. I think it's, if any of the things I've read about the lobbying on the behalf of generals lobbying the legislature is true, that's just criminal. I mean, that almost seems like Hatch Act violations and whatnot. I could be wrong, but I think that's something that's definitely got to be looked at by somebody. And I think whoever sponsored that bill, I don't remember who sponsored it, but where are they in all this melee? Why are they not standing up for their bill? I don't know.
Well, now, okay, I can answer that. Michelle Renault sponsored that legislation, Defend the Guard bill, and in committee this past session, Rick Eldridge, who was a co-sponsor, he's like, well, I just don't know. I think we should send it to summer study. So as I understand it, there hadn't been a summer study yet, but word got out that he was meeting with some senior leaders from the Guard, and they were discussing talking points. I did a show on that, and I had some people on here that were privy to it. And basically, they were coming up with talking points on why they did not want to pass the Guard bill and to help kill the Guard bill. And so that, yeah, I would think that that's something that we wouldn't want our senior leaders to be involved with, and I think it's disgraceful that a legislator would do that. But yeah, I hope that bill passes, and I think that was Michelle Renault is a freshman, but she's shown she's got more spine and more sense than a lot of the people who've been up there for years. So. Yeah,
I'm a great admirer of her. I've watched her work. I think she's outstanding. One thing that's funny that they do is they dangle federal money. What if you'll lose federal money if you don't? Yeah. And that's the one thing that'll make a state fold. It's strange that so many states are not more self-reliant, especially one like Tennessee, right? I mean, we've got, going back to the voucher thing, why not have looked at a private sector solution for that, right? And we've got all these businesses that we're drawing in. Why not have some kind of tax incentives or something for them to donate money to scholarships or whatever? I mean, once you stick Uncle Sam's fingers in, he's going to keep grabbing for more and more and more. It's just, It is. But you would think with a state like ours that, we draw people here because of our economy, that we would have more backbone, I guess is the word I'm looking for.
Yeah. Well, and we get so much, not only are we spending too much of our own tax dollars, are we overtaxing our citizens at the state level and wasting money on things like stadiums and giving Ford millions of dollars or billions of dollars. But we get about roughly 40% of our funding every year from the federal government, which means when the federal government eventually crashes, and it will crash, I mean, it's going to crash, there's no way around it, then all of a sudden you're short 40% of your funding. Now you got to make the hard decisions instead of, like maybe, and I'll ask you, is this something you would consider? Let's, sponsor legislation that incrementally reduces our dependence on the federal government. I know you're never going to get them to agree to say, okay, we're going to go cold turkey on 40%. But, maybe we do 5% or 7%. Start with education and just start reducing the level of dependency to where at least maybe we can be no longer federal government addicts addicted to our own tax dollars, being bribed with their own tax dollars. So when the federal government hits that iceberg that it's going to hit eventually, that, we're in better shape.
I absolutely would be more than open to something like that. Yeah, I think you do. You've got to cut waste where you can. Barry Goldwater wrote a fantastic book back in the 70s called The Coming Breakpoint, and it was talking about that very kind of same thing. I mean, we can't continue. It's one thing I last year I showed my students was the debt clock, because a couple of them didn't believe that we were not doing as well as they thought, and so I just said, you see that number moving right there? That's our interest. You see that number right there? That's taxes we take in. We don't have enough to carry the interest. Eventually, we're going to go pop. Yeah. And yeah, absolutely. I think that's a fantastic approach, is go in there and just because as well as I do, there's waste. I mean, there's no government of any decent size cannot have waste, and I guarantee you it's in there. There's probably all kind of pork belly. There's all kind of there's no telling what's all in there.
Right. Well, just giving you an example. So I remember I was still in high school when Reagan took over, and I remember somewhere around 81, 80, it may have been a little bit before, but whenever it was, late 70s, early 80s, when our debt hit the $1 trillion mark. And they were trying to explain to everybody how much $1 trillion was. And it was just, that was unfathomable, what $1 trillion was. And the fact that, how are you ever going to pay that off? or the question of how do you pay that off? Now we're what, 37, 38 trillion? We're
Yeah.
over 100% on our GDP. The interest, we're doing $1 trillion. I think it's going to be $1 trillion in interest this year, or approaching $1 trillion in interest this year. I mean, a whole lot of ugly is coming, and I don't know how soon it's coming, but it's coming, and I hope we can get some people in there to do something about it. So we got several minutes left, but I want to make sure if there's anything that things that you want to legislate on or things you want to talk about, go ahead and let's take that time to do that.
Yeah, I definitely I want to expand a little bit more about what you said. I think there's definitely room to cut fat. I'm like I said, I'm all about small government. The government's limited functions, and we only tax enough to pay for those limited functions. And I think that solves a lot of it. And I think, like you said, we have to be self-sufficient. I tell people that all the time. One day things are going to pop. Make sure that you can. Make sure you can fend for yourself. Make sure you can whatever. I mean, I live out in the country, out in McMinn, and I mean, I've got pigs. I hate them, but I'm freezer. They'll fill the freezer. So
yeah,
it's one of those things that I think self-sufficiency. But I think too. There needs to be a kind of a I don't know if Doge. I don't know if a Doge thing is the right.
Sure.
Concept, but I think there needs to be an inspector general who's kind of neutral, who can go look at different departments and say, hey, you got this going on. I mean, TVA has an IG, right? I mean, that's one of our more important functions or more important things in the state, and they have it. So I think that's kind of the way to go. And I think too, looking at, some of the stuff we've got, there's so many rural counties who have gotten shorted with this voucher stuff because there's no quote approved school in the county, so they just don't get money. I read an article that the public school kids are $300 a kid underfunded now. I think that's just something that's got to be. There's got to be a revision. That voucher bill they passed was pure trash, and I still am unsure why they were so determined to do it. Bill Lee's a lame duck. I mean, it's just a fact. He can't run again.
Right.
But I do know. I think I saw on your last show you said something on AFP.
Yeah.
And yeah. I know they pushed that bill a lot. I know that I think they came out against Frank Nicely.
They came out against anybody who didn't support the voucher.
Yeah. And that they. I think that tells you everything. And the interesting part in that, some of our legislators are, they're talking about, well, President Trump's come out swinging against AFP a couple times. And so, calling them a Koch brothers, I forget what his exact phrase, but he linked them to the Koch brothers and he talked about different things. But one thing too, I would like to see is more incentives for people to start farming again. We've lost so many farms. There's just like where we live, it's and granted development's happening, but it's also like where, there is land there. So say somebody's grandparents were a farmer and their parents were a farmer and then the kid doesn't want to farm. What's the incentive? Incentivize them somehow to where they're not just like, yeah, let me sell it to a developer for X amount. And now we got houses, but we can't grow food there anymore. Or we can't do whatever.
Right.
Like you said, eventually we're going to have a problem. We're going to end up with a shortage. We're going to end up with something that's going to be more. It's going to be more painful for everybody.
Yeah, and their conservation easement plan for those situations that didn't do anything. That didn't do anything good to help that issue. It just, some other third party is going to end up with control of the property. But yeah, you're right. Okay, maybe we encourage more farming some way. I don't know exactly how you do that. You can't really make people do something that they don't want to do, but I don't know. It just seems that their involvement are you familiar with the conservation easement issue?
Not really. No.
Okay. Yeah, that's probably something you'll want to look up because they make it sound like, hey, this is all about protecting farmers and farms. We're losing, and they'll say the exact same thing. We're losing all this farmland, but their conservation easements, that's a problem. And that's something you're probably going to want to look at. I don't have enough time to go into it right now, but just be aware of that because they will take that and run. Oh yeah, this will save farmland, but not necessarily.
One other thing I would like to see, and I've heard a lot of complaints about this, is property taxes, right? I mean, you got a 65, 70-year-old, their house is paid off, they're still getting bled.
Yep.
There's got to be some way to correct that. I mean, there's just got to be. I know McMinn, we have fairly low property taxes, but we do have them. I think that, that's just something that's kind of critical too, right? It's just, you get these people, when you can finally own your home. It's not like you're in your 70s or 80s and you get behind on your taxes and then the county takes your home. I mean, that's just asinine. And right. I think that little bit of relief would probably be good as well.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah. Anything else you want to hit?
You know what? One thing I would say is, I've been asked, can you win? I can win. I think I can. I think if we get a good grassroots movement going on, I consistently hear people that are unhappy with him, that just, like I said, they feel like they're not represented. They doesn't do what they ask. And I've been surprised, honestly. I've had some influential people that I kind of scratched my head at who had asked me for coffee one day and just said, he's got to go. You got my vote. What can I do? And I've been surprised at that because I thought,
wow.
Okay, that's so that's the thing, with me too, is I'm open to discussing. We won't necessarily agree on everything. I talked to a lady one night at one of the community centers here, and I knew she was a Democrat, but I just told her, we're not going to agree on everything. We can't, right? We're just, our ideologies are too far, but we can agree on the important things. We can agree on what matters to kind of like better everybody's life. One thing, when I was a sheriff's deputy, I was kind of known for treating people with respect, and dignity. I didn't care, I never cared who you were, what color you were, anything like that. I believe people are people. We're all created by God. We all deserve that respect and dignity, and we all think differently, and don't get me wrong. I know some on the left are absolute lunatics,
right?
But I do know that we can all see common ground. But another interesting thing about him as well is I think I mentioned PAC money, and that's something I would encourage people to go to followthemoney.org and just plug his name in,
right.
And where all of his money comes from. One of them that was interesting to me, it actually was it's called Excellence in Education, but it actually says it was formed by concerned California parents, educators, and community leaders to ensure our schools provide quality education to every student. So I guess my question, what is that? Where are those values in line with East Tennessee values, right? It's formed by California teachers and parents, and Californians are not known for being super conservative these days, right? I mean, all the conservative ones are here, and others. But I think I think we've got to get a grassroots movement. We got to dig our heels in, and we got to fight, because there's nowhere to go. I've got a friend he moved here from Oregon, and he told me, he said, I've moved once. I'm not going anywhere else. There's nowhere else to go. Yeah. And I think we got to remember, and as far as being able to stand up to any kind of pressure, I've done that. I mean, a friend of mine years ago he was a boss of mine too. And when I lived in DC, and we were having dinner one night, and he said, Billy, you know why you're not getting promoted anymore? And I said, I have no idea, man. I would really love the answer to that. And he said, and I'll clean this up a little bit, but he said, it's because you won't suck up to them. He said, when they tell you they want to do something, you start talking about the Constitution, you start talking about laws, you start talking about policy. They don't want to hear that. They want it done. And he's like, if you would just put your integrity aside, you'd be a senior executive. He said, your problem is you just always are like, well, let's look at how do we do this the right way, and how do we do that? And so I don't have a problem standing up to that kind of pressure. I had another boss one time he was new. It was his own fault. I mean, he just hadn't educated himself, but he directed me to do something, and I told him no, because it was a violation of the Constitution. He wasn't happy, and we never got along good after that. But the point in that is there's what's right, and you have to stand for what's right. And I think that's what I think a common thread that a lot of people see is that, we have to stand for what's right. We have to make the best of it. My kids live here. My grandkids are here. I'm not going anywhere. Like my friend said, there's nowhere to go to. I mean, we're going to dig in and we're going to fight here.
Yeah.
So,
Because you know what? And you said there's nowhere to go, because from everything I could tell, every Republican supermajority throughout the country, with the possible exception of Oklahoma, and that may be only because I don't know as much about them, but there's not a Republican supermajority in the country worth a damn, okay? They are all very much similar to ours. They are all reptiles and rhinos. And they talk a good game, but generally speaking, they don't do much. And they push a lot of the same garbage, and they surrender on a lot of the same stuff, okay? So, yeah, there's nowhere to go. And we do need to clean up Tennessee. And that bottom line, people have to get out of this mentality that elections are like a football game and, oh, I just want to back the guy who's most likely to win. I mean, okay, I guess if you're going to be doing something underhanded and you're influential and you got a lot of money, I guess that's fine and well. But for the average voter, just backing the winner, if the guy that wins is not going to uphold his oath and doesn't really care about you, he just cares about your vote, then you don't gain anything. So we need to be putting good people in office. We need to put people in office who can stand up, and not be not roll over for the leadership. Now, I'm not saying that you should go pick a fight, at every opportunity, by no means. And yes, you have to work with other people, and you're not always going to get exactly what you want. But we got way too many people who their criteria up there seems to be, well, the governor wants this, so I need to do it. Or, well, the Speaker of the House said that we need to do. No. Those people, and the governor especially, because you know what, our Tennessee state constitution is actually set up to where the governor, he's a weak governor. You can override his veto with the same majority that passed the bill. Nice. So he should be treated that way. He should be put back in his box, and that's the way I see it. So anyway, hey, you have a website, correct?
I do. It's bolton4tn.com.
Okay, and I think there we go. All right, yeah.
That'll give you more of my feelings on issues. There's a contact sheet on there. If you feel led to donate, please do. Give you a little bit more about me. And I'm always happy to talk to anybody. And I think that's what we're kind of falling away from as a country. But I'm always happy to just talk. We might not agree, but we can always talk about it.
Okay. And there's your Facebook page.
Yes, sir.
Nice. Looks good. Looks good. Now, do you have any upcoming events?
We've got the Monroe County GOP Lincoln Day dinner, I think it is, October the 4th or 5th. Then I've got kind of a meet and greet with some folks on the 5th. And then I've got various meet and greets. And then we have, here in Athens, we have Pumpkin Town. I'll be walking around there. So, yeah, that's pretty much what's on the agenda right now.
Okay. We got your card up there, your push card. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So it just kind of outlines the issues. I mean, one thing I did, I spoke at our local Republican Women's Club not long ago, and I kind of gave that definition of conservatism that I just gave you. And then I asked them, is it conservative to grow the size and the scope of government? Well, no. Well, this is what happened. Are conservatives pro-life or pro-choice? Pro-life. Well, this is what happened. Are conservatives pro-Second Amendment? Yes. Okay, well, this is what happened. So I kind of took them down through that. And then at the end, like I said, resume, you can Google Mark Cochran's name. You can pull up his LinkedIn, and you'll see that it's kind of an anorexic thing. I mean, it's somebody who has tailored themselves to being a politician. And so, I don't know. I mean, and I've got, I joined the military delayed entry when I was 17. I shipped out after graduation. I served, then I moved back home, got in the Guard, served some more, was a cop, got recruited by the Secret Service, did that, then went over to Customs. I've served since I was like 17 years old. Moving here to McMinn, I serve, I sub. It would shock you to know substitute teachers don't get paid a lot. You get a little more hassle when the kids think they don't have to listen to you. So
right.
I substitute teach here. I teach at that co-op. Just last week, I taught a self-defense class to a little American Heritage Girls troop here. So my grandmother, that's one thing she instilled was you serve other people, right? She stepped into kind of the void for the breach for us and kind of took me and my sister. She was our guardian. and she always working hard. I mean, when I was 13, she said, "You got to go work at Uncle Jimmy's factory." My uncle owns a lamp factory in Mississippi. And so when I was 13, I was loading trucks with grown men, struggling to put a 6-pack of lamps put a 6-pack of lamps in the back of a truck in a box. And so I learned about those kind of things. You make your own way, you work hard, and you serve other people, and you serve, your family, and then you serve others. And so that's kind of my thought on it. And so that's just what I am. I don't, you will not see me serving myself. I just don't do that. And that's kind of the thing. Like I have a pension, so I'm not looking to be a career politician. I don't want to. I don't want to be the governor one day. I want to do the citizen legislator. I won't run more than 4 times, and then I'll walk away and pass the baton to somebody else. That's my philosophy on it, and I think that's what the founders intended. I think I was talking about that to the kids today in my class. George Washington rode off into the sunset after 8 years, and that's it. And the only reason I say 4 terms is I figure whatever is equal to what the governor has. But I think that's what's missing today. These guys forget that. They're trying to. We were talking about term limits for the federal elected officials, but that's the thing. Nobody's going to term limit themselves up there.
Right.
But I think that's what the founders intended, and that's my philosophy on it. I mean, I have no desire, like I said, to be the governor. I don't want to be the Speaker of the House in Tennessee. I just want to serve, try to better District 23 as much as I can, and then come home. So.
Well, sounds good. Hey, thank you very much for being with us, and good luck to you. We'll have you back on after, sometime in 26, maybe a couple times, and good luck to you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Glad to have you. Hey, I want to thank the audience for taking the time to watch our program tonight. It doesn't cost anything to subscribe, so please be sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons, as well as the notification bell so you never miss an episode. We appreciate your support. Thanks again to Jonathan and Mary for their financial support for the month of July, August, and September. Hey, guys, we really do appreciate it. You've just been great. Check out our audio podcast on iHeartRadio, Spotify, and other platforms as well. Sign up for our weekly newsletter at our website, teeninformer.com. Find and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. The TFA in Cookeville will host TNCSS speaker Danny Blitz to discuss nullification September 29th from 6 to 8 p.m. at Logan's Roadhouse, 1395 Interstate Drive, Cookeville, Tennessee. Meet and greet with Monty Fritz, Wednesday, October 1st, 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. at 1900 South Germantown Road, Germantown, Tennessee. That'll be a great event. Hey, if you haven't heard Monty speak, you need to hear him. On Thursday, October 2nd, the Stewart and Henry County TFA, the Tennessee Firearms Association, will meet at the VFW in Paris at 7 p.m. This is our monthly meeting. You do not have to be a member to attend. The topic is the Bill of Rights. The VFW is at 2512 East Wood Street in Paris, Tennessee. The Tennessee Constitutional Grassroots Coalition will host Freedom Fest on Saturday, October 4th from 12 to 8 p.m. at the Tate and Lyle Performing Arts Center, 1470 Robertson Spring Road in Loudoun County, Tennessee. Go to tcgc1776.org for tickets. Okay, on the 29th, our guest will be James Simpson. The title of his book is Manufacturer Crisis: The War to End America. Now, this guy was in the Reagan administration. He's an economist. He was in the Reagan administration, the first Bush administration, and the Clinton administration. He explains the enemy and the methods being used to destroy our country and the origins of this enemy, which began over 100 years ago. Yeah, and the war is definitely already begun. You're going to learn things in this episode that you likely never knew about. Our second show next week, Colonel retired Ed Kennedy joins us to expose Taliban tie and other bad actors from the Naming Commission and what can be done about their un-American actions. Now, these are the people that were all for tearing down the Confederate monuments in Richmond and other places. You're talking grave desecration here. We've talked about that before on the show, and we'll have other guests to talk about that as well. But you want to join us for that one. That also, and we don't have the ad up yet, but we are going to have retired Colonel George Malden. He lives in Stewart County. He's an author. He's a Vietnam veteran. He did 32 years altogether in the military. And he's going to talk with us about his experiences over there. And he's got a lot of good stories to tell, so you're not going to want to miss it. That's this Sunday at 2 p.m. That's it for now. Good night from Paris, Tennessee, that is.